We are ready to start our conference. I'm the secretary of this conference, and if you have any technical issues or some housekeeping issues, please address me directly or address some people sitting in front in front of you in the middle table that represents Secretariat. I'm very happy to see you all here in Geneva in this UN room number 18. It's not the most modern room, but it is quite well equipped, and I hope it will serve us very well during these 2 days of the deliberations. I'm not going to take much time of yours and will pass right away the floor to our main speakers for the opening. Deputy Executive Secretary Andrey Vasilyev of UN-ECE.
Thank you. Distinguished Ambassador, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues. I welcome you all, delegates of the member states, experts of the scientific community and representatives of civil society, as well as colleagues from international organizations, to this UN-ECE regional conference under the symbolic title, Enabling Choices, Population Priorities for the 21st Century. It has been almost 20 years since the International Conference on Population and Development, the ICPD, was held in Cairo, Egypt in 1994. It was a turning point in the international policy approach to population, firmly placing the needs and rights of the individual at the heart of development policies and programs, and envisaging a world where all people enjoy equal opportunities and freedoms to make choices and pursue their own life aspirations. Countries participating in the Cairo conference, including 50 UN-ECE member states at that time, adopted the program of action which established a firm link between population, development, and human rights, health, and gender equality, thereby responding to population dynamics within a human rights framework, advancing gender equality and empowerment of women, promoting sexual and reproductive health, including maternal health, increasing access to education, especially for girls, addressing issues of urbanization, migration, and environment, ensuring that anyone experiences the benefit of sustainable development, and promoting participation of the civil society. The ICPD program of action was agreed for a 20-year time frame, and we have gathered here today to take stock of the achievements and remaining challenges, and to discuss priorities and policy recommendations that need to be taken in the light of changing societal concerns and emerging issues in population dynamics across countries of our broad and very diverse region. While assessing the process, we should not forget that the implementation of the 1994 ICPD program of action started during a critical period in the history of the eastern part of ECE region, where a profound transition towards more democratic and economically dynamic societies was taking place. In a rather short period of time, these countries experienced significant social changes in value systems and norms, including important changes in their policies and legislation. The Western USE countries underwent societal changes as well, though perhaps more gradual. These societal changes had a great effect on population dynamics in the UN-ECE region and posed new challenges. Fertility declined in the East and remained low in the West. Life expectancy increased and population aging intensified. New forms of families emerged and proliferated. International migration flows increased, and population became more mixed. The way we approach population and development has further evolved as well. We assess today that population dimension is a key element of sustainable development, which rests on social, economic, and environmental pillars, and also considers the impact of development on the opportunities of future generations. It is therefore indispensable to reconcile the needs of all groups within society, young and old, men and women, and people with special needs. The United Nations Economic Commission for Europe has been working closely together with the United Nations Population Fund to evaluate progress in implementing the ICPD program of action in the UN-ECE region. EU, member states, and civil society organizations have participated in the ICPD Beyond 2014 Global Survey, taking stock of progress made in different areas related to the ICPD program of action and identifying the persistent and emerging issues. I would like to thank you personally for the time and work that has been invested within your organizations in completing a very comprehensive questionnaire of this survey. The information gathered through the survey provided the basis for UN-ECE regional report, ICPD Beyond 2014, the UN-ECE region's perspective. This report is meant to be an important tool for policymakers and civil society to keep track of the persistent issues and future priorities with respect to population and development. We'll look forward to hearing more about the results from the survey that will be presented later during the plenary sessions. A number of other activities undertaken by UNFPA together with the UN-ECE are part of the ICPD Beyond 2014 review process in the ECE region. They aim to involve more stakeholders in the process and to broaden and discourse on the ICPD issues. For instance, 3 expert meetings on the same topics as the thematic sessions of this conference were convened in March-April this year. More than 75 experts from different countries and representing various stakeholders groups took part in them. You will hear about the outcomes of these meetings during the respective sessions here today and tomorrow. Also, as part as ICPD Beyond 2014 review, a scientific report was commissioned from the Wittgenstein Center for Demography and Global Human Capital in Vienna. That copies of this publication are available today. In it, you will find an analysis of the UN-ECE population trends and prospects with insights on policy implementation and good practices in the region. Many of the population and development principles set in the ICPD program of action 20 years ago were incorporated into the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. Today, the United Nations agencies are working with governments, civil society, and other partners in preparing the post-2015 development agenda. Therefore, the outcomes of the global ICPD Beyond 2014 review in mind, the discussions of the next 2 days are your opportunity to contribute to shaping the post-2015 development agenda. I would like to thank the government of Switzerland for co-hosting this conference and for its interest in and generous support to the ICPD Beyond 2014 review process. Let me wish you 2 very successful days and productive discussions at this conference. Thank you very much.
And I will pass now floor to Ms. Anne-Birgitte Albrectsen, the Deputy Executive Director of UNFPA. Your floor, please.
Thank you so much, Excellencies, distinguished participants, friends and colleagues. It gives me great pleasure to address you here at the opening session of the UN-ECE Regional Conference on ICPD Review. The conference happens at a time where Europe is in the midst of a demographic, or is in a situation which is unprecedented in demographic history, and also at a time where Europe is in the midst, or many countries are in the midst of an economic crisis. So this opportunity to discuss policies, approaches, lessons learned from the region comes at a very, very opportune time. Before I move a little bit into substance, let me just start by thanking the government of Switzerland for hosting the conference and for its continued commitment to ICPD and its reviews. Obviously also all you governments of the region for your active participation in the global survey. Also a number of countries that worked on securing the decision of the UN-ECE region to join the global review of ICPD, notably the Netherlands that led those consultations. We're obviously also grateful to our main partner in this endeavor, the UN Economic Commission for Europe, for the close collaboration that we have had throughout the review process. Also, let me acknowledge the contribution of civil society and youth in the preparations of the conference and their inputs, their dedication, and their technical and programmatic contribution. And finally, on the thanks list, I do need to thank my own colleagues at UNFPA, the country office representatives, regional office, our Geneva office, as well as the ICPD Secretariat and other colleagues. The ICPD vision, as historic and groundbreaking as it was, its goals, its objectives, are growing in relevance every single day, including in this region. It becomes more evident as we at the UN engage in ways to extend and better protect human rights for all, ensuring equity, gender equality, non-discrimination, combating gender-based violence, and ensuring sustainable development. Fulfilling women's rights and ensuring that young girls and their rights and their right to fulfill their potential through education, prevention of early marriage, access to contraceptives and information is and will be at the heart of the change agenda for development and the post-2015 agenda as we move forward. In this region, there's an awful lot to celebrate in terms of what has come out since Cairo 19 years ago. Countries have adopted policies to address ICPD-related issues on a whole range of areas. Policies promote rights, gender equality, and women's empowerment. Policies that facilitate family-work balance, increase access and quality of sexual and reproductive health services, including for adolescents and young people, to promote healthy and productive aging, to enhance the impact of migration, to name just a few. Some of the results of these changes are visible and present everywhere we go in the European region. People generally live longer and healthier lives. They have more reproductive choice, as well as better knowledge and means to fulfill those choices. People can move more freely between countries. New forms of families have emerged. Adolescent fertility, abortion, and maternal mortality has declined. Gender gaps have been narrowed in many areas. Gender-based violence, although still a taboo in many countries, is more openly discussed and addressed by governments as well as civil society. More intergenerational solidarity is observed. The population issues are better integrated in policies and programs, and in many countries, they are addressed in the context where they should be of human rights rather than numbers. This is the overall picture, but there's also another part of reality. Even in this region, existing rights and choice is still not, or exercising rights and choice is still not a reality for all, 2 decades after Cairo. In fact, I have to express my concern that in some countries of the region, rights are in fact being rolled back. Moving forward and not backward need to be our common goal. We all recognize the unprecedented challenge of low fertility, migration, and aging in this region. But what we also need to address during this conference is that policies designed to look into these issues are often ineffective because they fail to address fundamental issues of rights of individuals and couples to make choices, to enjoy gender equality, and to have universal access to quality family planning and reproductive health services. These are prerequisites for people to fulfill their reproductive choice. A strong body of evidence is available in some parts of this region, providing that comprehensive family-friendly social policies, gender equality, and access to RH services contribute to increased fertility. The bottom line is that there is no space in the 21st century for population control, for coercive policies. They do not lead to sustainable development. Other issues that we need to address during this conference is the fact that life expectancy has not increased equally in the region, and male mortality is of concern in parts of the region. The prevalence of HIV in UNECE region has shown a significant increase, especially in the last 2 decades and amongst young people. It really is going the wrong way. All youth do not have access to sexual and reproductive health information and services, and the absence of comprehensive sexuality education in many countries of the region severely affects life opportunities of young people, rendering them vulnerable to early pregnancies, sexually transmitted infection, and HIV. The high economic impact of not maintaining a healthy and productive young population harms development targets in many countries. Other issues that we should be looking at is the fact that amongst the many challenges that still remain, negative stereotypes, discrimination, and traditional harmful practices still exist. And migration sometimes means brain drain in some parts of the region, drainage of essential human resources and capabilities. These are just a few of the issues that we hope to address during these days. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the time of Cairo, the UN-ECE region was a highly diversified in political, socio-economic, and demographic terms. In the 2 following decades, while the region has seen many of the changes that I've just expressed, what we've also seen is that disparities have broadened between countries and sub-regions. We're also observing deepening inequities and inequalities within countries that further exacerbated obviously by the current crisis, and with a direct impact on women, youth, and elderly, as well as other disadvantaged populations. Why is this important? Because we have learned, and the review also shows, that nations with more equality do a lot better on nearly every measurable health and social indicator, and are more cohesive and inclusive than less equal societies. This is evident. Addressing inequalities is therefore a high impact intervention. And this can be done by providing universal sexual and reproductive health services, respecting rights, empowering women, combating gender-based violence, and promoting youth participation. In addition to giving high priority to reducing inequalities and inequity, one of the critical conclusions of the review so far is that the investment in human capital is key. It's not key, it's actually essential as a strategy for sustainable and equitable development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, another noteworthy result of the review of this region is that effective partnerships with stakeholders at the national and regional levels and the involvement of civil society and community organizations is part of successfully achieving the goals of Cairo. But we've also learned that youth groups are rarely included as partners of government as well as other vulnerable groups. Strengthening their participation, those of youth and vulnerable groups, is something that would need to be addressed. As we consider the ICPD issues of the region, we should be conscious of the direct interconnection with the discussions going on now worldwide to frame the post-2015 development agenda. As I've already said, many of these issues will find themselves as part and heart of the conversation that we will be having over the next few years. It's important to examine the findings of the ICPD review and assess how they can potentially inform priorities for a new development framework. Let me conclude on a very positive note. Research indicates that current demographic trends in this region are not necessarily threats themselves, and societies can live secure and prosperous with small populations. Narrow policies that seek to influence a specific demographic trend in a desirable direction are just not effective. Long-term vision and planning, coherent sets of broad and complementary multisectoral policies combined with investments in human capital, that is, in people, is the most effective strategy for sustainable and positive impact. Such policies can and must be designed in broad partnerships between government, civil society, academia, private sector, and the media. This is at the heart of the Cairo agenda. And lest we forget, let's just remind ourselves that population issues are not about numbers, but they are about people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very passionate opening. And now I will move to the item 2. And item 2 is election of the chair and vice chair of our conference. We will elect the chair and vice chair for both days of the conference. And we expect that our chair will prepare the chair's summary, the outcome document of this conference. For this, he will have a small secretariat group who will be helping and also will count on your support during those 2 days. The vice chair will help to run this conference for chair, will replace him whenever his chair is busy with the chair's summary. We had preliminary discussions in the organizing committee regarding whom to suggest as a chair, and I will pass now floor to our colleague from the UNFPA Regional Office for Eastern Europe and Central Asia, Werner Hogg, to announce these 2 candidates. Werner, your floor.
Thank you very much, Vitalia. I have the honor to propose on behalf of the organizing committee, and in fact in line with the tradition in this region that the host country chairs the review meetings of ICPD, as chair of the conference, Mr. Urs Schmid, ambassador of the permanent mission of Switzerland. As vice chair, I have the honor to propose Mr. Alexei Vovchenko, a deputy minister of the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection from the Russian Federation.
You heard the candidates. I would like to hear if you have some oppositions or you agree with the suggested 2 names. Mr. Urs Schmid as a chair, Switzerland, and Mr. Alexei Vovchenko, Russian Federation, as vice chair. I don't see any hands, so we call election closed. Thank you. Thank you.